Hi everybody, Joe Fisher here, Manuscript Brewing. We're going to do another brew day today. We're brewing an American Pale Ale. We're going to be using some Citra and some Chinook hops, grown by our special guest, Mark Sloan. You may know him from Hate Beak or Malvador fame. You'll hear some of his music later. Don't forget, Manuscript Brewing is going pro. We're going to be opening up a brewery right here in our home state of New Jersey. Keep an eye on the website, manuscriptbrewing.com. Find us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Manuscript Brew, and we'll see you there. Alright, so the first thing we got to do is we got to mill our grain. I've got, let's see, what's in here? 27 pounds of pale malt, 8 pounds of Munich, and 1.5 pounds of Cara Pilsner, or dextrin malt.
I carried this.
Did?
Yeah, it was, it's not something you want to do on your first day, maybe. I don't want to get an expert, but...
Well, that's, you know, that's part of why I have assistants.
Right.
Carry the heavy things, wash things, all the important stuff.
Somebody to yell at, you know, things do go wrong from time to time. You want somebody to take it out on.
It's true, you need a scapegoat. So this is a Monster Mill MM2 that I'm just running with a regular Craftsman 19.2 volt drill. This is my hopper. It's got a hole. So I learned what I used to do is hold the drill in my hand. I got a little smarter, and I now lean it on my kneecap. Eventually there'll be a motor driving this, but not right now.
See, this is a one-man, one-person operation. You do the whole thing by yourself. People will know this. What is your goal here in getting the grain milled to the right size?
The idea is to break the grain open to expose the endosperm inside without completely obliterating the husks. And the reason that the husks are important is because the husks will help us filter out the grain from the liquid later. I'm going to zoom in here as far as I can. That's a little too far. Let's bring that back a little. So you can see here the uncrushed grain, the whole kernels. And this is the crushed grain. So this is a pretty fine crush, but you can still see that there are plenty of whole husks in there, along with the broken up endosperm. And the endosperm is where all the starch is in the grain. And once we add that starch to hot water, it activates enzymes that are in it. The enzymes convert that starch into sugars that the yeast can eat, and that's how we get beer.
And it's important to not, other reason to not go too fine is to avoid the dreaded stuck.
The dreaded stuck runoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens when things are crushed too finely like flour, and when you add the hot water to it, it just becomes this clump.
You end up with clay.
Of clay, exactly. And the water just sits in your mash tun and you can't get it out, and swearing ensues.
So did you have a period of refinement, trial and error to get this right?
Yeah, because basically what you want to do is you want the crush to be fine enough that you extract a large portion of the sugars, but not so fine that it turns into cement in the mash tun.
And you will do a test to see the extraction efficiency, right?
Yes.
You like to test to see how you're doing.
Yes.
And that's one way you can tell, do I have my grind?
You have your crush right.
Yeah,
Yep.
my crush.
Yeah, what we do is, you can grind this one up. Yeah, have fun.
And see, I also have knees. This is an important
It's
thing
critical.
to point out.
Crucial.
If you're not with knees, you may want to check with. Probably should pay more attention to.
Yeah.
Just pick the whole thing up.
Yep.
Assembly.
The whole assembly.
Okay.
Kit and the caboodle.
Here's Joe's coffee.
Oh wow.
Go on.
Oh, look.
It never hurts to have too many assistants.
More helpers. What do you got for me?
Yeah, because somebody says she's done watching.
Is this
the
for
movie.
me?
Joe's making a movie.
Thank you.
You're on
Alright,
a
give this to your dad.
brewing instructional video. Thank
Look
you.
at this.
Alright, and didn't you want to tell your dad something?
Daddy, I'm done watching the movie.
Okay, what are you going to do now?
What
And
else?
I'm gonna go
And
upstairs.
pester Liz?
No, there was something else.
And I'm hungry.
Yeah, that.
Okay, I will take a break.
Good plan.
I will figure out what she needs. And be back. Oh, you're still filming.
Yeah, so what we're doing now is I'm mixing up some sanitizer. And I know we've got a lot of brewers out there watching, but if you're a new brewer or you're looking to get into it, sanitation is crucial. You want to keep everything clean first, and then sanitary next. I'm using a product called Star San. This is a mild acid sanitizer. It's basically phosphoric acid. It's the same stuff that they put in Coca-Cola or Pepsi or whatever. And at dilution, which I'm gonna dilute it in this water I just put in the bucket, it's completely safe. You don't have to rinse it off of your parts. So that's why I like to use it. I put it in a spray bottle so I can spray things down, and then I don't have to worry about rinsing them off later, because it doesn't add any flavors. It's completely safe.
And where did you find this product?
This I bought at my local homebrew shop. You can get it online at pretty much any homebrew store you like. Midwest is a good one. Brewmaster's Warehouse is one of my favorites.
I would imagine Restaurant Supply might have something like this.
You know, I don't know. I never looked into it. I don't know if they use...
Is this designed
Sanitizer.
specifically for the homebrew industry?
This is for the brewing industry,
okay,
yeah.
cool.
5 Star Chemicals. They make a lot of other brewing-related
I know
chemicals.
with the restaurant you get iodine-based cleaners.
Yes, those you can actually. I have iodine-based cleaners as well. What happened? Did I just kick my camera? Probably.
I think that was a seismic tremor. You get a lot of those.
Yeah, there's what was it called?
Iodophore.
Iodophore. Yes, Iodophore was the de facto.
Yeah, for a long time, because I don't know
Sanitizer
if
for a
anybody
long
was
time.
making a product for specifically for homebrewing.
Right, and you can still get it. Star San 5 Star actually makes it now. They call
But
it
that's nice.
IoStar.
This is very user-friendly and safe.
Yeah.
Iodine, you kind of want to make sure you, maybe if you had a really bad infestation and for some reason you didn't want to get rid of whatever it was that was infested, you'd use the iodine.
Yeah.
Stuff.
I use the iodine when I do kegs because it doesn't foam. One of the things about the Star San is it foams up. You can see it kind of looks soapy. It's not, but it tends to foam up. So when I'm filling kegs, I want to be able to see the liquid level in it, so I use the iodine instead. But the iodine, it can stain.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one of the added
Yeah.
bonuses.
And if the concentrations aren't good, it can leave a flavor. So I like the Star San a lot.
Cool.
Oh yeah, let me pull up my spray bottle. This is just a like a 99-cent spray bottle I got at my local big box store.
And one of the basic points is that anything that does not get heated up, you want to sanitize. Right?
Yes, anything that comes in contact with your beer,
That is beer that is
that's
brought
not going to get
below-
boiled.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you want to sanitize. So
Interesting.
what I'm playing with here is what we call a false bottom. You can see it's perforated stainless steel. It's got a little lip on it there. I made this thing with a grinder. And then I've got this sheet of stainless mesh. I found that I was getting a lot of grain, a lot of fines going through the mesh here. So I decided to use a stainless mesh on top of that. Alright, so here we are at our mash tun. Got my false bottom. And this is 3/8 silicone tubing that I cut to fit around the false bottom, and that kind of seals the edges and keeps grain from getting past the sides of the false bottom, because I've had a little trouble with that in the past. And then I'm going to use a little bit of that Star Sand as lubricant to squeeze it in here. Or not, you know. That happens too. There we go.
Every good video needs a certain amount of struggling,
Yeah,
tension.
it's true. A certain amount of derping. Alright, we're up to the mash step. The mash step is where we add the water to the grain to activate enzymes to extract sugars and starches. The enzymes convert starches into sugars, and that all has to happen in a certain temperature range. What I'm shooting for here is 154 degrees. So what that means is I have to take this 60-degree grain, add it to this 163-degree water, and when they come together it should all make 154 degrees. And the way you calculate that is usually with brewing software. You can do it by hand, but who wants to do that, right? Math is hard. So I use Beersmith. I've been using it for a long time. I think it's a great product. There are plenty of other ones out there. Make sure you try them all, see what you like. Most of them have free downloads, free trials.
Apps now.
Yeah, you can get apps on your phone. I have Brewaid on my phone, which is a really great free app for Android. So yeah, I'm going to finish emptying this. I put a little water in here to warm it up and to rinse out any dust or brew house funk that might have gotten in there since my last brew day.
Depends how funky your brew house is, really.
I do have a pretty funky brew house, if I do say so myself. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten wet feet by forgetting to close valves. It's very easy to do. And here we go. So, I'll move this so we can see a little better.
I will try to stay out of the way as much as possible. Well, okay.
Got all of our water. Whoops. This over here. Finish adding the grain, or the grist, as it's called.
And one thing I wanted to ask about was the range of mash temperatures depending on the kind of characteristics you're going for in the beer, right? There's a window of acceptable temperature for the enzyme activity, right?
Yes, and it's actually a pretty small window. Well, you can anywhere from
140s, right?
like 148, 146, all the way up to 156.
And you're going to have a different profile of residual dextrins, right?
Right. The idea is that a cooler mash will cause a higher percentage of fermentable sugars, so you'll end up with a drier beer because the yeast will eat all of the sugar in the beer. A hotter mash will end up with more unfermentable sugars.
Complex sugars that the yeast can't
That the yeast can't break down, exactly. So that's good for something where you want more body, more mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel, exactly.
Like, you know, if you want to do a stout or a Scottish ale or something like that. For this American Pale Ale, I kind of want sort of middle of the road.
Middle.
So I'm going for 154. This should be similar to a Sierra Nevada. That's my goal. And the flavor profile is going to be very different, but as far as the bitterness and the color and the mouthfeel and all that stuff. So this is right at like 152 and a half, 153. This is almost perfect.
For the brewmaster, you should get
And we've still got
a few clumps in
here. You can be pretty aggressive with it. Yeah, it looks pretty good.
And I would imagine you get a feel for the resistance of the mash.
You do.
You know when you're there. And everybody's system will. They'll have to you have to get used to your own system.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know.
I mean, this system is a little crazy for most homebrewers. Yeah, I'm brewing on a 25-gallon scale here.
But it was years in the making too.
Yes.
You didn't just start out.
No.
You started out like everybody else.
Yeah, you don't need to be this crazy to be making good beer. I just like equipment.
And also, you've picked up your share of 10-gallon Sparge containers and decided I got to get some pumps going.
Yeah. Oh man, you know what? The best thing I ever added to my brew house were these 2 pumps.
Yeah, that's amazing. Moving
liquids around. The other solution to that is if you don't want to use pumps, you can go with the gravity type mash brew setup.
Yep.
With your Sparge water and mash water's higher than everything else, right? That's a nice.
There's a dough ball. Look at that bad boy right there. See how dry it is on the inside?
I could do some more.
Yeah. I think we're just about there.
I think there are a lot of good options if you want to do the all grain on the 5-gallon level.
Oh, absolutely.
You started off with the propane burner.
Yep, one of those turkey fryer burners. Got it for $40 at Dick's. Came with a 7-gallon kettle. Instant all grain brewing setup. There's
you could be pretty happy indefinitely with that system.
Absolutely.
I actually had that. That was my system.
All right, let's call that.
Okay.
Another option that's getting more and more popular is something called brew in a bag, where instead of a false bottom to separate the grain from the liquid, you brew in a big mesh bag.
I had one of those.
And then you, at the end of the mash, you just lift the giant bag out of the grain, and Bob's your uncle. All right, so when Mark's done eating the grain off the mash paddle, we're going to let this sit for about an hour, and that'll let all of those enzymes convert the starches into delicious sugars, and then we're going to transfer that liquid into the boil kettle, and we're going to start cooking. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's time to collect all this delicious sweet wort that we just made. So we're going to do this in a couple of steps. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to run the liquid from here into my boil kettle. Then I'm going to add more water to rinse the grains. We call that a sparge. I'm doing what's called a batch sparge, where I do batches of water, mix it with the grain, and then take the resulting sweet liquid off. You can also do something called a fly sparge, where you add water at the same rate that you remove it at the bottom. There's pros and cons to each one. This is the way I do it. Everybody's different. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off some liquid off the bottom, and I'm going to pour it back on top, and I just have a little screen here, and that just keeps the liquid from disturbing the grain bed, because I want the grain to filter the liquid as it goes through, and that'll help clear a wort. It'll help prevent particles in the boil. So I'm going to point this down a little so you can see what I'm doing down here. So you can see the liquid comes out the bottom here. The false bottom's in here, remember. It's about this high. So there's wort in the space at the bottom. And as I draw it off the bottom, it's going to come down through the pump. And at first it's going to come out this tube. And then I'm going to pump it up here, and it's going to go into the boil kettle. So let's start. See how this works. That looks pretty nice. So I'll run a quart, maybe 2 quarts off. boy, howdy, does that smell good. Alright, so that's that. And now I'm going to start pumping from here, through the pump, up through here, and into the boil kettle. So I'll switch this valve, make sure this valve is off. And pumping we will go. When I remember to turn the pump on. So I don't want to just let it run full speed. I want to slow it down a little. First of all, so the pump doesn't get starved, like you just heard, because I forgot to turn the valve on. I do that pretty much every single time. And I find a slower sparge helps with efficiency. It helps keep the mash from compacting down. The efficiency could be my imagination, I don't know. So we don't want a stuck sparge. If the sparge sticks, we have to break up the top of the grain, or depending on how bad it is. Sometimes the pump is actually clogged and I had to blow back through it. But since I added the screen, I haven't had that problem. So we just let that run until it's done. Alright, since you guys missed the last 10 minutes while I was talking to a dead camera, I'll catch you up. We started batch sparging, and what I did was I added a batch of water to the grain, mixed it up real well to dissolve the sugars, let it settle for a few minutes, and then I did the same thing that we did a few minutes ago. I took some wort off the bottom, called vorlaufing, V-O-R-L-A-U-F, and recirculated it back into the top, did that a few times until it was clear, and then I pumped into the kettle. So now I'm going to do my second batch sparge with 6 more gallons of water, and I'll show you how that goes. Whenever I brew indoors, I use a little fan, and that keeps the steam from condensing above the boil kettle and dripping back into it, taking whatever dirt was on the ceiling with it. So you guys might like to see what the runoff looks like at first here. You can see it starts off very, very cloudy. Anybody in the audience screaming hot side aeration yet? Just wondering. It's starting to clear now a little bit. So I'm going to do one more bucket like this. Yeah, and see how clear that is now? I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's definitely a lot better. So now it's time to start pumping. So I've got about 19 gallons of liquid in here. I'm going to boil off about 1.5 gallons of that. That's based on experimentation on my previous brew days. And when it cools down, it's going to shrink a little bit. It's about a 4% cooling loss. So I'm going to end up with roughly 16 gallons, maybe 16.5 by the time we're done here. And this grain, I'm going to shovel this grain out of here. And I'm going to give it to a friend who raises chickens. The chickens go crazy for this stuff. And I give him grain and he gives me eggs. So, We're going to do two things now. I stirred the wort up real well to make sure that the sugars are evenly distributed. I'm going to take a sample, and I'm going to measure the amount of sugar in that before I do the boil. So I'll put that off to the side. The other important thing that I'm going to do is a brew house tradition called a hot scotchy. You take some of this sweet wort, add a little bit of scotch. This is Pig's Nose, 100% Scotch whiskey. Let's launch it. Oh my gosh, that is delightful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some foam control drops. These are, the brand name is Firm Cap S, or Firm Caps. The S is in big letters, so I guess Firm Cap S. And basically it's simethicone. It's the same stuff that's in Gas X. It's a silicone derivative. It's completely inert. It sinks to the bottom of your fermenter. It's not going to affect your beer's flavor, head retention, or anything like that in any way. Some people don't like to use it because they don't like putting silicone in their beer. I'm okay with it because for me it's no different from using silicone hoses. It doesn't get in the beer. It settles out. So it prevents nasty foam overs. If you've ever had a boil over, you'll understand why I want to use it. Alright, so you remember our sample? I'm going to take my hydrometer here. Hoping this is focusing for you guys. I'm going to float my hydrometer in the sample. Give it a little spin to dislodge any air bubbles. And check our pre-boil gravity. Pre-boil gravity looks like about 1046. Alright, we're just about coming to a boil here. You can see all these proteins and other goodness up here on the surface. This is the hot break. It's foamy and delicious. So a lot of older brewing texts will tell you to scoop that hot break off. I don't.
What about commercial? They don't really do that?
I don't. None of the ones that I've seen do.
That kind of be a pain, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And what was the logic behind that? They say that it...
well, I know part of it is to prevent boilovers. Because this hot break will stack up on top and it'll...
It's like cooking rice.
It'll blow up.
It's pasta and all that starch.
Pasta. The same idea. And there's so much sugar in it that it's like cooking sugar, where the bubbles tend to stack up and boil over.
Now you got it going, yeah.
Before you know what's going on. So yeah, I don't know if you can see. It almost looks like a lava flow. It's just starting to boil. Once this comes up to a good solid boil, got 2 ounces of Chinook here. These are hop pellets. Basically just ground up in compressed hop cones.
Having grown some this year, that's an incredible amount of hops in there in terms of the actual cones. Because we did an entire plant.
Right.
We ended up getting the 2 ounces.
This is 2 ounces right here.
Yeah.
This is a whole plant's worth of hops.
That's a whole season. And this was a first year growth. A mature hop plant's going to give you a lot more than that. But we did enough to dry hop one batch of beer. One huge
that's
batch
awesome.
of beer. But yeah, I mean, that's our starting point.
So you can see that. Look at that nice boil we've got going there. So now in go the hops.
And you have your nice little basket there.
Yep.
That's a nice feature because otherwise you're straining that off at the end.
Yeah, I used to just dump the hops in because the pellet hops, they kind of disintegrate when they go in there. But using larger amounts, they tend to clump together and then they clog the pump. And that's no fun. Oh wow, that's a good solid boil. Alright, I'm going to turn this temperature down a little bit. I'm going to go down to about 80%. Let's see how that goes. That's a good solid boil. Yeah. And we're going to start our timer since the hops went in. Alright, so this guy here, this is my Brewhemoth. This is a 22 gallon Conical fermenter. And it's called Conical because of the cone-shaped bottom here. And what that does is during fermentation, or after fermentation, the yeast will settle down to the bottom, and then I can take the yeast out of this valve, which we're going to put on in a minute. And that lets you do primary and secondary right in one vessel. You can save the yeast, reuse it for later. It's just a really cool thing to have for convenience, and to be able to do big 22-gallon batches all at once. So I don't have to lug 4 fermenters around and put them in fridges and things. There's a cooling coil that goes inside of here. That coil is attached to some cooling liquid that I keep in a freezer, so that keeps the beer at a constant temperature. So that allows me to be more consistent with my brews. I can also lager in here. I just did a bock, and I was able to ferment it down to 53 to 55 degrees without any trouble. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the parts that I'm going to use, just throw them in the sanitizing bucket. Kind of cleans everything and gets any dust off. And it also lubricates these silicone gaskets, makes them easier to put together.
Did you get this equipment from homebrew or from like chemical?
This is from a company called the Brewhemoth.
Okay.
And these were actually oxygen tanks that they converted into fermenters.
Yeah, because these fittings are vacuum fittings that you can buy if you were doing things like E-beam deposition in a lab.
Whoa.
Same kind of, anytime you want to pull a vacuum on something, these fittings are what you use.
Oh, cool.
They're pretty hardcore.
Yeah, these are triclovers or triclamps. I think these are pretty industry standard for a lot of different industries. Mm-hmm. I know they're standard in the brewing industry, certainly. So these valves, these big valves that we're using here, these are called butterfly valves. And these are sanitary. Unlike ball valves, there's nowhere for bacteria to hide. Ball valves, when you close them, there's still liquid in the hole in the ball. So that's a breeding ground for bacteria. These butterfly valves are sanitary. They're normally used for wine. I like to use them on any of my fermenter fittings because I like my, obviously anything fermenter side, I want to keep as sanitary as possible. Alright, let's start building.
This is the part where you speed up the film to like 2 or 3 times.
And you play
So
yakety
everything
sax.
is funny. Yeah, everything is funny when it's done quickly.
So you may have seen one of my previous videos on the spray ball here. This is a plastic spray ball. This thing spins when liquid goes through it. So this is what we're going to use to spray the inside down with sanitizer.
You used to have one of those inverted.
At Sunday school, we should have paid more attention. We broke some rules, so we were prepared for the rapture. I got us a plan. We'll load the truck and drive upstate. I know of a place where we can watch the kingdom fall.
So what I'm doing now is pumping sanitizer from the bucket through the spray head. It's spraying down the entire inside of the fermenter and coming out the bottom. So I'm going to let that run for a few minutes and then shut it off and seal it up. Mark just reminded me of something that we wanted to talk about. This is our 45-minute hop edition. The reason that we add hops at different times is because hops have several jobs. when it comes to brewing. One of the jobs is to bitter the beer. Normally, if you had beer without hops in it, it would be unpleasantly sweet. It would be syrupy, it would be cloying, because there's nothing to offset that sweetness from the malt. We add hops to bitter it. And when you add hops early, the bittering oils in the hops have time to, I think they call it isomerize, in the boil. But that boil also drives off the flavor and aroma compounds. The aroma compounds are very volatile, especially. So if we want the aroma and the flavor of a hop, we're going to add it much later in the boil. Which is why we're going to add our Citra at 15 minutes and at 0 minutes. Because I want the Citra to give us as much flavor and aroma as we can get. Whereas the Chinook we're using primarily for bittering. So I want the hops to get boiled a long time. I want those oils to get heated up and boiled around so that they incorporate into the beer and give us the bitterness that we want. And every hop is rated for a certain amount of acid, alpha acid and beta acids. And those are what gives the beer their bitterness, those acids.
From the lupulin.
From the lupulin, yes, the lupulin glands in the hop cones.
A little rupture that you can actually rupture these on the hops.
Yeah.
Little sacs, and that's where they release that oil, and it's very aromatic.
And you get all sticky.
Sticky.
Yep.
Plants are just disgusting, you know.
Plants are gross. Now we're gonna dump the grain so that I can give it to my farmer friends here.
We're really just gardeners with delusional gardeners.
Delusional gardeners, yeah.
Is there anything I can assist with here, or do you like to do this?
No, I think this is a one-man job. You can maybe try
I don't
to make
want to obscure this shot because it's really worth.
Yeah, well, when you see the grain come out in a big blob on my feet, that'll.
And it's biggest potential for disaster in this entire process.
Whoop, like that.
That's good. I think you should move the bucket as you're pouring it.
You think that'll help?
Yeah. We're going for the latest fell.
Fail blog.
Yeah.
Oh!
See, if we had you in a
Perfect.
bikini, that'd be even better.
Look at that. How nice is that?
And then if you want more footage, just do the follow-up of me dragging this out to the birds.
Schlepping through the
Also,
snow
yeah,
out to the birds.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Look at how gorgeous that is.
I'm telling you, it's still very nutritious.
Oh, absolutely.
There's
It's
a
delicious
lot
too.
of good stuff. I know. They love it. They go crazy over it.
But you know what? It's kind of cardboardy, which is good. I mean, we
Good.
got most of the sugar.
And that's another thing, you know, you're talking about your extract. Is it possible to get a batch of grain that just doesn't have as much sugar?
Yes. Now, Breeze
Some quality control
had a problem
issues.
with that a
Yeah.
while ago, where some of their grain just wasn't converted properly.
And the
Or
malting,
wasn't
yeah.
modified properly, not converted. We converted it here.
Well, there's a very specific process of when you stop the process.
When you stop the germination.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's something like 2/3, they call it the aquaspire, when it's 2/3 the length of the grain. That's when you want to cut it off, but do you cut it off fast enough? Was the grain grown to the same standards as usual? You just
Right.
don't know. I mean, as a brewer, you buy this stuff thinking it's going to be the same as it was last time. Usually
And it's
it
not
is, but,
necessarily,
you know,
though. Yeah. That's absolutely it.
I like that you've written, maybe you can't see this, so I'm do a close-up. You've actually written your name on the bottom of this. One of the things I was looking at here is your alpha content on the hops are they're very similar. Yeah. And that's a pretty high
That's a pretty high value. 12.5 and
Double digits is pretty good.
usually I always thought that I guess there's no real correlation between the amount of alphas and whether or not it's going to be good for flavoring.
Yeah, I always thought the same thing. Like you need to use a low alpha hop
Yeah.
for flavoring. I don't know if that's true though.
I feel like it used to be more true when there were fewer varieties. The more traditional varieties, like I guess it's the Saz hop.
Sots, maybe.
That one's pretty low, I think, and that's a traditional. But they use that for all parts of the Pilsner, right?
I think so. Yeah.
But that's like you got those Hallertau and
Yep.
some of those.
Your Fuggles, your English
Fuggles,
hops.
yeah, Goldings.
Yeah, Fuggles are only like 4.5%. They're pretty light. All right, we opened the door for a little ventilation. I hope you can still see what we're doing here. We've got 23 minutes left on the boil. What I'm doing now is I'm sanitizing my plate chiller. And if you're not familiar with what a plate chiller is, you can check out one of my other videos. I'll put a link to it over here somewhere.
Oh, there it is.
Hey, nice. And I talk about what a plate chiller is. So what I'm going to do is I have water in my hot liquor tank. I've got it heated up. It's about 198 degrees now. I'm going to recirculate it through the plates back into the hot liquor tank. And I'm just going to run boiling water through it for 5-6 minutes. And that will absolutely kill everything inside there, clean out all the pathways, and it'll be ready to brew. I'll just close it up and wait until it's time to put the beer in it. Now we're almost, we've got 30 seconds left in the boil. We're going to add our flame out hops. And I'm going to start whirlpooling. And basically whirlpooling is just pulling the wort off the bottom and pumping it back in through this port, which has a little angled fitting on it. And it spins the beer around as it starts to cool. And what that does is it collects any sort of solids and proteins in the middle and makes like a little pile in the middle of the kettle. It just means less of that gets into the fermenter at the end. Would you turn off that green switch on the right? Thank you. Flame out hops go in. And turn on the switch right below that one. And there we go. So we'll do this for about 10 minutes. Let everything spin. Let it settle for about 5 minutes. And then we'll start chilling. And we'll get some video of that in a few minutes. Thank you. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm hooking the output of the chiller up to the Brewhemoth here. Had a little trouble when my pump stopped working. So I had to kind of jerry-rig everything so that I could use my other pump. Seems to be working now. So, what I want to do first is remember to purge all the water that I used to sanitize that out. So I should be able to just do that with gravity. You can see the beers, the wort is going in, going through all the plates. Help it along a little bit here. There we go. First thing I'm going to do is just run some cold water through to get all the plates cooled down. Then once it cools down, I'm going to start running the wort through, and I'm going to collect. What's going to happen is the hot wort is going to transfer its heat to the cold water, and then the cold water is going to come out hot. So I'm going to catch that in my mash tun and use that for cleanup later. All right, here we go.
good. You hear it filling up, right?
Yeah, so I've got good hot water coming out of the chiller. So that tells me that it's transferring plenty of heat.
Yeah, that's cool because that comes out ice cold. That's ice cold tap water.
Yeah, my groundwater is very cold this time of year.
Yep.
But yeah, wow, ow, that's really hot. So now we're just going to add the yeast. I'm using Safe Ale US 05, which is one of my favorite California ale yeasts. It comes in packet form. I'll use 3 packets for the 16-gallon batch. It ferments clean, it ferments really well, and very reliably. I like this yeast a lot.
Probably a good time for me to talk about the brew day where Joe actually fell in one of his mash tuns, and he had to have special service come out and extricate him. It was, we all learned some new words, some new profanity that day. It's very important to have a very good sense of humor in brewing. You will be made fun of quite a bit. And on that day, Joe learned the importance of wearing underwear under his kilt.
See, it's nice and deep and wide. It's got plenty of room for the hops to roll around in. It's now at the bottom of my pot.
I also like this. Is another often overlooked brewing tool.
The mallet.
It kind of keeps people out of the way. You know, it's good to stand right next to the door.
Just in case.
It used to be a nice, solid piece of wood, but you know, over time,
one too many. That's for when the kids come back.
You get a lot of questions, right? Kids ask a lot of questions.
They do. They need to be beaten.
Well, some downtime is always good. Foamy hand.
So you remember us talking about Star Sand foaming?
I won't even tell you where this hand has been.
Well, here's what it looks like
this.
after a few minutes of recirculating. Everything is nice and foam covered, good and sanitary.
Hopefully the inside of the tank looks just like that. Right?
Nice foamy mess in there. That's what we're hoping for.
Keep appearing.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
I'm jealous.
The
I want a beverage.
The magical barista named Liz. Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
None of this would have been possible.
Today's brew day is brought to you by coffee.
And vodka. This is basically just pure vodka and a little bit of Everclear.
Because the vodka's not strong enough.
We are suffering through long Russian winters.
You can see, I don't know if you guys can see out there what it looks like.
Permafrost. So we're getting a nice thaw now. Last couple of days.
This is after 3 days of 40+ weather. It's still absurd out there.